Let's draft the Womenswear size 8 front bodice. I'm going to be moving rather quickly through this video to keep the video as clear and concise as possible. With that being said, if you miss any information, please pause, rewind, and rewatch the video. If there's any missteps during this drafting, it can mess up the entire draft and you run the risk of having to start over from the beginning. So be sure you're following every step exactly. All of the measurements I'm using will be listed in the description below. I'll also have them posted on the video here. I'm going to be using a series of pens and markers to do my drafting. Please use a pencil for your drafting in case you need to make any changes. I'm only using pens so it's easier to see on the video. So let's get started. I'm going to draw a line near the top of my paper, line A to B. That's going to be our full length measurement plus 1/8 of an inch. That's 17 3/8 of an inch. From A, I'm going to draw a line, a 90-degree line. I'm going to use my L-square ruler to draw a 90-degree line from A to C. That's going to be our cross shoulder plus 1/8 of an inch. That's 7.5. From this line, I'm going to square a line down about 3 inches, just for a guideline. Well, across, excuse me, not down. From B, I'm going to measure up along this line to a point D. That's going to be our center front length. That's 14 3/8. From B, I'm going to square another 90-degree line down from B to E. That will be our bust arc plus 1/4 inch. That's 10 inches. From E, I'm going to square a line this way, about 11 inches. Just another guideline, similar to what we did over here. Doesn't have to be a specific measurement, just has to be a 90-degree angle. From the point D, I forgot this step. From point D, we're going to square out another guideline about 4 inches. All right. Next step. From point B, we're going to find a point G. That's going to be from here, it's going to land somewhere along this guideline from B to G. Now the length of the line we want to create is our shoulder slope plus 1/8 of an inch. That's 17.5 inches. So from point B, I'm going to use my ruler to find 17.5 inches. I'm going to place 17.5 at my B point, and I'm going to pivot my ruler until 17.5 inches lands on my guideline here from C. 17.5, that looks to be about there. So that is point G. Oh, let me draw that line, sorry. 17.5 to there, because I'm going to need that line. That's B to G. G to H is our bust depth. So I'm going to measure along this line our bust depth, which is 9 5/16 of an inch. 2, 4, 5. That's point H. Next, from point G, we're going to measure the shoulder length. It's going to be line G to I. It's going to be similar to the line we did from from B to G. Our shoulder length is 5 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to place 5 3/16, 1, 2, 3, on point G and pivot my ruler until the end of the ruler hits my line between A and C. Doesn't have to be perfect, but as close as possible. 1, 2, 3/16, 5 3/16 to here. From I, I'm going to square a line till it intersects with line D. What's important about squaring this line, I'm going to use my little ruler here so I don't have to get on my giant L square. It should be 90 degrees to this line we just drafted. It should be 90 degrees to the GI line. So that's our 90 degrees right there. Now we're going to draw a line J to K. We need the point H. We're going to start from point H. We're going to make a 90-degree line perpendicular to our center front line through H. Grab my square. And we want this line J to K. J will begin on center front, and K will go over here. That's going to be our bust span plus 1/4 inch. That's 4 inches. So I'm squaring to my center front line through point H, 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, D to L, here's point D. We're going to measure along this line to the point L. D to L is 1/2 of D to J. So we know where D is, we know where J is. So D to L is going to sit right in the middle. Now, I can take a ruler and measure the distance between D and J, divide it in half and mark it on here. I can do that with my ruler. I can take a tape measure and measure between D and J and fold my tape measure in half and mark that. I'm lazy, so I'm just going to take my paper and fold from D to J. I'm going to put this point on top of this point and make a crease in my paper. There's my midpoint. Done. No calculations needed. L to M, so we're going to draft a line 90 degrees from center front. L to M is going to be our cross chest measurement plus 1/4 inch. That's 6 7/8. And then square a guideline up and down from M. Give myself a little bit of a guideline there. B to F will be our dart placement measurement, which is 3 1/8. Right there. Then we're going to square a tiny little line in this direction, 3/16 of an inch. Teeny tiny little line. 1, 2, 3/16. Tiny little tick mark, not quite 1/4 of an inch, just shy of 1/4 of an inch. All right, we're almost there. From I, point I, we're going to create a line I to N. That's going to be our new strap measurement plus 1/8 of an inch. That's 17.5 inches. And I to N is going to go from I somewhere along this guideline. So again, I'm going to find my measurement, 17.5 inches. Place that on point I. And then pivot my ruler until it stops on this guideline. From this point N, I'm going to measure along this guideline to find O. N to O will be my side length. That's 8 1/4 inches. From N, we're going to measure 1 1/4 inches in this direction and give ourselves a little guideline. 1 1/4 inches. Now, what I want to do is take this line O to N and pivot it out this 1 1/4 inches, and I want to make sure that it stays the same length. It was 8 1/4 inches when I drafted it, so when I pivot it out, I want to make sure it stays 8 1/4 inches. So 8 1/4 on my ruler, place that at O, that's my pivot point, and pivot this until it touches that 1 1/4 guideline. O to P. Then we're going to draw a guideline from P to F. Remember, F has moved down this little 3/16 of an inch. I want to finish drafting my waistline here, and to do that I have to draft out my waistline dart, but I have no idea how wide it needs to be. I do, however, know the waist arc measurement that I need this to be, so from B to F, and then from P to some unknown location, I know needs to equal my waist arc. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to switch to one of my friction pens. This way I can make adjustments. I can iron this away if I need to. So it's going to be the same color. You'll be doing this in pencil though. I'm going to get my arm curve, my fashion French curve. And from F to B, I'm going to draw a curved line. I'll just zoom in here, you can see what I'm doing. I want to make sure that the line terminates along this guideline that we've already made. I'm just going to bend that line ever so slightly down towards the F point. This is subject to change. This is not set in stone. I just need to have an idea of where this curve is going. And now I'm going to measure the length of this line. It may not be exactly the 3/8 of an inch that we drafted to begin with, but it should be close. I'm going to use my nice curving flexible ruler to place the 0 point at B, curve it along that curve I just drafted. Yeah, I call it 3 3/16. I'm going to run some quick calculations. I took the waist arc measurement plus 1/4 inch of ease and subtracted this length of this curve, and I'm left with 3.81 inches. So from P along this line to to Q, P to Q, sorry, should be about 3.81 inches. It's just shy of 3 7/8. 3.81 inches, somewhere over here. I'm going to draw a line from K to F. K is now our apex point, and F marks one of our notches for our dart legs. So I'm going to draw a line from K to F. Remember, F has been lowered that 3/16 of an inch. Looking at about 7 5/8. Your measurement might be slightly different. Mine's a little bit, it's 7 5/8, give or take a little bit. I'm going to go with 7 5/8. I'm going to pivot my ruler from K through Q and make sure that it's the same length as K to F. So K to F was 7 5/8. I'm going to go through my Q point and measure 7 5/8. So that when this dart closes, the dart legs should be the same length. Now that dart is going to go to my apex, which if we sewed it that way, it'd be a very pointy apex. You may not want that. We're going to push this dart point off by 5/8 of an inch. This 5/8 of an inch is an arbitrary measurement. It can be an inch, it can be 3/4 of an inch, but following along with the textbook that I've got, I'm going 5/8 of an inch. I tend to push it off a little bit further, but 5/8 is fine. To push that dart point off, I want to make sure that the dart point doesn't stray in either direction. I want it to go down the center of that dart. So I'm going to fold this dart leg to meet this dart leg on my paper so that I can find the center of this dart. So there's my center line fold. Going to measure from K along that line 5/8 of an inch. Right there. But from this point, I'm going to redraw my dart legs between this point and F and this point to R. For my armhole, I want to give myself a bit of a guideline here at point O. From O to P, I drafted my side seam, and I want to draft out a 90-degree line from there, get an idea of where that 90-degree line will sit. Give myself a guideline, so that's 90 degrees from O to P. That goes into my armhole. I'm going to get my fashion friend curve and draw my armhole. The armhole should go from point G. It should touch the guideline at point M, and it should smooth out into the guideline towards O. I'm going to switch back to my friction pen because the armholes and sleeve caps are notorious for needing to be changed later. And I don't want to commit this to permanent pen just yet. I'm just going to draft this with a friction pen. You will be drafting with pencil. You can also draft with a friction pen, even if you're doing the rest of your draft with pencil. So if you want to iron away all your attempts, you can. And then my neckline here, just going to zoom in a little bit on the neckline. My neckline should smooth between my guideline from I and my guideline from D. And the neckline might scoop a little bit in towards this guideline from I, just a little bit. As long as it touches point I and point D. So you can see how my curve is going slightly past this guideline here. It's kind of sitting over here. That's okay. As long as it touches point I and lands on the guideline at point D. It should scoop ever so slightly past your I guideline. I almost forgot, there's one last thing I want to do. I want to do what's called truing my waistline. We created this little curve from B to F, and we should make another curve from points R to P. But rather than draft it arbitrarily, I want to do it accurately. So what I will do is I'm going to fold my dart as if I were actually sewing it together from fabric. From K to F, I'm going to pinch my paper up towards me and pinch along that dart leg from K to F. Okay. And I'm going to fold this crease of paper to my other dart leg. Now, this can get really tricky. As you see, my paper doesn't want to do a whole lot. It helps to bring this over to the corner of a table. Place the corner of your table at your dart point and then fold it. So the corner of the table, sorry I had to put that off camera, but the corner of the table, place your dart point at the corner of your table and then fold your paper over. It makes your life a little bit easier. I can see B to F and R is sitting right underneath here to P. I'm going to hold this with one hand, grab my fashion French curve with the other hand, and I want to draw a smooth curve from B through F and R to P. I'm going to draft this with my pen. So there's that little curve. Now I've drafted my dart legs the same length, so this should be accurate. The last thing I'm going to do before I finish this, I'll hold on to this and grab a serrated tracing wheel. If you have a hard working surface, you can use a regular serrated tracing wheel like you use to copy patterns. If you're working with a pinnable work surface, like a piece of cardboard or homoseau or something, you can use a needlepoint tracing wheel like this. I'm just going to use one of these serrated tracing wheels because most people are likely to have this if you're a seamstress. And I'm going to push this, and push this pretty hard, through all of those folded layers of paper. You can see through my paper I've got a bunch of folded paper underneath here. I'm just going to roll over that folded paper back and forth to make sure I copy that curve. Unfold my paper, and if I zoom in real close, you should see a series of dots, perforations in my paper. I can follow that with my ruler. So following those perforations from where my paper was folded gives me an accurate dart peak. So that if I were to cut this from fabric and sew it together and have all this excess left in here, it should create a smooth curve once the final is folded. It should keep that smooth curve and not have any excess fabric hanging out of here. And just so it makes a little bit more sense, we'll set this vertical.